အခုမြင်တွေ့ကြရတဲ့ကိုတော်ကတော့ဖြစ်အမေရိကန်ပြည်ထောင်စုကနေရောက်ရှိလာတဲ့ဆရာတော်ဘုရားကြီးကိုယ်တိုင်ယဟန်ပေါင်တွတ်သွင်းပေးခဲ့တဲ့ဥက္ခစာရဖြစ်ပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီကိုတော်ရဲ့နောက်ပါကကိုတော်ကတော့မလေးရှားနိုင်ငံကဥက္ခစိတ်ဓာတ်လို့ဖြစ်ကြပါတယ်အဲ့ဒီယဟန်တော်နှစ်ပါးတို့ကလည်းဆရာတော်ကိုနောက်ဆုံးအကြိမ်အခုလိုပူဇော်မှုပြုခဲ့ကြပါတယ်ဆရာတော်ဘုရားကြီးရဲ့သီလဂုဏ်တမာတိဂုဏ်တို့ကိုအခုပုံတော်မှာကြီးညိုပွေရာဖူးမြော်မြင်တွေ့နိုင်ကြပါတယ်။
Yes, good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm very pleased to meet you, especially because of Siadoji. We cannot meet with Siadoji, so we would like to know about your experience when you meet as a monk with Siadoji for around about 5 years. Let us know.
Well, let me give you overview if I can. You can interrupt me anytime.
Yes, of course.
Too much or too little.
Yes.
Mahasi Seroji was, you're right, he was my preceptor as Buddhist monk.
Yes.
He gave me the name Agasara, Sunday born.
Yes, I know, yes.
I became monk here at the Sima Hall in the Mahasi Yeka. I became Samanera with him in New York.
Yes.
In May 1979.
Yes.
Now, I first read Seroji's book on Satipatthana in the early 1970s in Florida, where I was living, and I wanted to learn meditation, so I read this book and I was deeply moved. And from that early encounter with his instructions on Satipatthana, I felt some strong urge to meet him, and so I dedicated the next several years of my life to practicing this method on my own and trying to find anyone who knew anything. And eventually that led me to Buddha Gaya, and it led me to coming to this monastery that we're in today.
Yes.
I came here with a group of people in March 1977 for one reason, to meet Seroji.
Yes.
He was not here, and so all of us went to his home village of Sekon.
Yes.
There we met him. And what I remember is he was giving a Dhamma talk to many thousands of people, 2,000 or 3,000 of people. And we interrupted it with all these Westerners coming, about 10 of us. And we met with him. And I only had one question. I want to learn intensive Satipatthana practice under your guidance, and I want to do it as a bhikkhu.
Bhikkhu, yes.
He said, you can't stay here because of only 1 week visa. But he recommended that I go to Sri Lanka, to Kandaboda, the Vipassana center, with one of his students.
Yes.
I think it's Venerable Sivali. And so I went there and practiced. Then I went back to India, then eventually back to America. And because of this 1 week restriction, because of the May wind, it felt inappropriate, impossible to come back here to practice for 1 week. So we invited him to America. In fact, I initiated this and organized a retreat for him for 2 weeks in California in the desert.
Yes.
And we had maybe 100, 150 people. Another one in Massachusetts, another 2-week retreat with Sayadaw that I was actively involved in organizing, producing, and supporting. And so these 2 retreats, I became one of his kapiyas.
Kapiyas, yes.
One of his kapiyas, because he had his Burmese kapiya, but we needed one for Burma to English, English to America. And so I served in that function.
Yes.
And I was with him all the time. And among the things that I remember, he was unequivocal, unshakable, consistent in the highest regard I'd ever heard for someone who spoke about meditation. It was as if the most important thing of his life was the power of satipatthana. And it was so compelling to me to see an older person who lived the holy life as bhikkhu, who so confidently spoke about, if you are aware of this and you see this and sustain your mindfulness, this will arise, and from that, this will cease. It was so cause and effect.
Yes.
And it was like so smart, so simple, so clear, so confident. Anyway, to make a long story short, at the end of this 1 month in America, having been with him every day, pretty much outside of the times he was with the Burmese community, I asked to ordain as a monk with him this time.
Yes.
And he said, okay, you've asked me 2 times now.
Yes, first time in Sekon.
Sekun,
Yes.
now. I actually asked him, I asked him in California 2nd time, actually I asked him again in Massachusetts 3 times.
3 times.
And so he finally said, okay, you have asked me 3 times, you can ordain as Samanera. But I make no promise to you that you can stay in my country.
Yes.
Only 1 week visa, but I will try for you, he said. Best to ordain as Samanera here in New York,
Yes.
and then come back with us to Burma. So I went and asked my mother and father permission to become a monk.
Yes.
They said fine. I had no debt, I was healthy, and so a few of my friends came to New York where Sayadaw was staying in Brooklyn, and I shaved my head, put on the robe, and became Samanera.
Yes.
And the next day, morning, we all went to the airport and were to fly to London.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, they put me right next to Sayadaw on the airplane. I remember very distinctly. He was on the window side.
Yes.
I was in the middle, and then there was another fellow next to me. It might have been his kapiya or another monk, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It could have been Usilananda, could have been Uegadama. Maybe, I'm not sure whether Chenmayeka, whether Sayadaw Ujjanaka was with us that time. But there I was, and I was only 27.
Yes.
I'm not so sure how old Sayadaw was. 77, 82.
75.
75. Like
Yes.
So he's quite a bit older than I was.
Yes, 75.
But what really both shocked me, struck me, and inspired me was that the whole flight from from New York to London, I don't know how long, 6, 7, 8 hours.
Yes.
Sayadaw closed his eyes and sat there still, without moving. I mean, without moving. Without moving.
Without moving.
Without moving anything. No meal, no water. Didn't open his eyes. And of course, I'm thinking 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, I take a nap. He's still sitting there and just absolutely still.
Yes.
For the entire flight from New York to London. And then there was the announcement of the flight landing, and so on, and he just spontaneously opens his eyes.
Yes.
He still doesn't make any big deal of it. He just sort of prepares. There's some words being said by the other monks. And we land, and he didn't move for the entire time. And I, personally, I hardly slept that night. I felt cold and hungry and restless and worried and leaving my family and my friends and feeling very unsure of myself in these robes without my hair, without my language. And my first experience with Sayadaw, leaving my country, is with him being motionless
Yes.
for 8 hours. I had no idea what this represented, except that it was not only highly unusual, obviously, it was stunningly inspiring to see someone who had that ability, that control of their consciousness,
Yes.
to turn on and awaken from a state of mind that they chose to abide in, to calmly and equanimously travel such a long distance. So that was my first big encounter with Sayadaw.
Yes.
Now, the second, and here it is, I don't know, what is, that was 1979.
Nine.
This is 2016.
Yes.
That's quite a long time ago. So, from London, we were living in London at the Wimbledon, in Wimbledon, so I remember the tennis matches were going on at that time. Wimbledon, a Buddhist vihara there.
Buddhist Vihara.
Yeah,
Yes.
in Wimbledon. And also, they put all of us in the same room for living and sleeping. And I have to say, I was utterly exhausted that night. Sayadaw, again, that night when we were to take rest, all the other monks lied down, I lied down. Sayadaw sat up meditatively. And when we got up in the morning, it was quite early, I think because of the necessity to eat breakfast just after dawn in London, which was a big time difference from New York.
Yes.
Sayadaw had not, I don't know whether he slept or not, but he didn't lie down in the room that night. Now, maybe some of these monks are still alive, I'm not sure, and they could corroborate what I'm saying. But it's not easy to miss someone when you're utterly exhausted,
Yes.
who remains upright, composed, and fresh
Yes.
throughout all these hours and days. And I remember even watching him eat at breakfast, because I was eating also at his table. And the Burmese, for the first time in my life, watching their etiquette, their culture, their reverence. Just, all I could say, even reflecting now, like a cool, deep, slow-moving river. Just the way he ate. Even when I'm thinking about it now, all the time from that moment until eventually when I was with him when he died,
Yes.
1982 here.
Yes.
I was the only Westerner at this Shekta then. He just had a slow-moving grace about him that was just some deep, deep composure, as if the river ran real deep. The ocean was very, very bottomless in my mind. Maybe a part projection, but you know when you yourself are worried or restless or disturbed or jealous or envy, which me as a human, I felt a lot of those things and still feel some of them sometimes. With Sayadaw, you never saw nervousness, you never saw restlessness. Obviously those who could speak the language and knew him very well could far better describe his state of mind.
Yes.
And his personality. But as far as I could feel and see, by being around him for those years, I was here, from 1979 until 1981. Then I was forced out of Burma. I was, by Ne Win,
Yes.
told to leave, and one day must leave. And then I came back again and stayed again for a year or 2 or 3. This is when Sayadaw died. And I guess the purity also, not just the composure. The purity in the sense of Sayadaw was his, which everyone knows him to be, this tireless dedication to how you too, if you do this, can awaken from your kilesa.
Kilesa, yes.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone so passionately, without forced intonation, he did it calm, balanced, but consistent fidelity to the power of Satipatthana.
Yes.
That level of unequivocal confidence and clarity in teaching it was, I would say, the reason I stayed at this Yeka. Because I began to see in my own practice here over those years the result of what Sayadaw had dedicated his life to.
Yes.
And another important time was I practiced under his guidance, and then Sayadaw Uzawana and Sayadaw Usujata.
Yes.
Those 3 were my first teachers here. And then I had heard about Sayadaw Upandita.
Yes.
And so I asked Sayadaw if I could visit him. He said, yes, you can visit him. And so I was taken to his cottage.
Yes.
I think Sayadaw Upandita was teaching the Burmese men at that time. And through a translator, I'm not so sure who it was, might have been Unyini.
Unyini, yes.
Unyini, yeah?
I only heard.
You heard him, yeah. He did some of the Mahasi books.
Yes.
But when I met Sayadaw Upandita, and I asked Dhamma questions about Satipatthana and about the nature of practice, he met them in such a way, illuminating answers in such a way, giving example and metaphor and analogy in such a way that I said, how could it be that these teachers are so profound and they show their reverence to Mahasi Sayadaw? So it was as if these were his sons.
Yes.
And it offered me even a greater insight into Sayadaw to see how adept his sons were who trained under him.
Yes.
And then Sayadaw Upandita, of course, well, not of course, I asked Sayadaw Upandita if I could stay and practice under his guidance now. I wanted diversity from Sayadaw Usujata, Uzawana. And so Sayadaw Upandita said, if Mahasi Sayadaw grants you permission, you can practice under my guidance. So I went back to Sayadaw and he said, if Sayadaw Upandita says he'll train you, then you have my permission to stay and practice under his guidance. And
yes.
So Sayadaw Upandita became my Vipassana Saya.
Yes.
Up until this very moment. I was with him last night.
Yes.
And I'll see him now in a couple of minutes before he goes to the forest.
Yes. Forest Pagu.
Forest, yes.
Yes.
And that's, so many little smaller details, but that's sort of the core essence of my deep reverence for this Yeka and the monks, Sayadaw Upandita, Sayadaw Usujata, Sayadaw Uzawana, and Mahasi Sayadaw. Those 4, Sayadaw Ujjanaka a little bit, that have given me the support required to taste of the value, the power of the Satipatthana training.
Yes.
And it's unparalleled opportunity in my life. Here I am at 64, I'll be 65 tomorrow.
Yes.
And I came here when I was 27.
Yes.
And here I am listening to myself, and I'm even more enthusiastic about what I have gained here than when I first came here hoping to gain something. So it has deep value. And it all comes from Sayadawji's dedication, one, to Dhamma, and of course, most importantly, where I resonate the most, is the highest regard for the power of Satipatthana and his ability to illuminate how to practice it.
Yes.
You know, I've seen so many students over the years practicing mindfulness, and you can almost listen to them for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and know how much of what they've learned, whether they know it or not, the method, comes back to this center from Sayadawji's method and approach to Satipatthana.
Yes.
So his influence in the world is, for me, unparalleled in terms of addressing the core affliction of us humans, of the source of war, the source of rape, the source of genocide, the source of ecocide, the reason perhaps we're going to go extinct as a human species, this unrecognized lobha, dosa, moha. Sayadawji dedicated his life to the uprooting of this, the weakening of this. And so it's been a gift to this earth to have him, to have his presence, has his teachings, to be such a direct descendant of the Buddha. So that's my short version of Sayadawji.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, and sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.